Yeah, and I just remember you looking at me with like the most blank stare. And I was just got turned down by like 7 or 8
Yeah, because we looked
hotels.
like freaking hobos. You wanna take your seatbelt off?
Today we are going to be telling our Today we have a little story time of how we met. We're going to both give our side of the story.
So let's take us back to April 2016. Me and my older brother were gonna go on a trip down to San Diego, Mexico area because he was gonna be staffing at a leadership type YWAM thing in Mexico. And so him and I was 16 at the time, he was 19. We were gonna road trip, just brother and sister, down the coast of California. Then he would drop me off in San Diego. I was gonna catch a one-way flight back home to the Portland area. He was just gonna drive over the border into Mexico. And we were just gonna do like a quick 3-day trip. It was gonna be super fun. He worked at a local grocery store. He had this friend named Daniel. I did not know Daniel, obviously, because we hadn't met yet. They were like best friends though. I had heard a lot about Daniel, but I'd never met him or seen him or anything like that. So one day, probably like the very end of April, beginning of May, and Brock came to me and we were like about to go on this trip in just a couple weeks. And he's like, so just so you know, like I invited my friend Daniel from Ross to go with us on this trip. And I was like, wait, what? Like this was just supposed to be a brother-sister trip and you invited this random friend that I don't even know. Like I'm sure he's great, but like why? Whatever, like we'll just do it. Like you already invited him, so I can't really say like don't invite him. Brock had Daniel over on Cinco de Mayo, so May 5th. I was just like scarfing my face with a burrito in my dining room because you eat burritos on Cinco de Mayo. Brock brought Daniel over to meet me because he's like, if I'm gonna like take my sister and this guy on like a trip together in just a couple weeks, like maybe they should actually meet. So I'm like stuffing my face with a burrito and Daniel just like walks into my parents' dining room. And Brooke's like, hey Joe, like this is Daniel, like he's gonna go on the trip with us. I was like, oh, like nice to meet you. I don't remember if I shook your hand or not.
No.
Probably not. The dining table was huge, so I would have just like jumped across or something. But first impression, I thought he was really nice. I thought he was super quiet. You literally had nothing to say, like 0 things to say. And then I think that night we like booked our plane tickets home because now it meant that me and Daniel would be flying home together, just him and I. Okay, like I never met this guy, but I'm just gonna be like going on vacation with him. So we booked our camping sites down through California and our flight home all on the same day that I met him.
A couple things. Well, for me, Brock and I actually like weren't best friends at that point.
Oh.
Yeah. We just kind of knew each other from work and we had like just started hanging out. And so that's why it was kind of surprising that he invited me on a trip. I was just like down for anything, so that's why I went. But we didn't become like really good friends until after he got back and we started working together for my dad. Then we hung out a lot, but before that we actually were like just starting to become friends, so yeah.
The way that he like invited you was like you guys were like best friends. Like he wouldn't want to do this trip without you.
We worked in the produce department at the store and I was just cutting like melons in the back and then he just asked me to go and I was like, this is random but sure. And then when I met you, I remember you being really quiet too. And
That checks out.
just said hi and I like met you like literally as we were like walking through the dining room. We didn't really stop or talk or anything. We just like were walking through and then Brock's just like, yep, this is my sister.
And I was
like,
just
"Oh, hey."
like process sitting in a hole.
Yeah, and I just remember you looking at me with like the most blank stare. And I was just, alright, cool. I was just so down for anything that I just didn't really care. Didn't even really think about it. I don't even remember it being all on the same day that we booked our flights.
I'm pretty sure that's why he brought you over.
Uh,
Was to like meet me and like book our trip.
that's so funny. I don't remember. I remember it being
Or
like
maybe it
separate
was the
days.
next day or something. I don't know, it gets a little foggy.
Yeah.
But I do remember quite a bit of details.
It was definitely random, but I had nothing else really going on in life. Well, school. But then after that trip, I like ended up not going to school.
Then it was literally like 2 weeks later or something, 3 weeks later maybe, that we left for San Diego. And I remember like, I think I saw you one more time before we actually left on the trip, and it was to go get like snacks and like prepare for like all our camping stuff.
Yeah, I thought that was the same day that we were getting our plane tickets.
No, because that would have been just like 2 days before.
I don't know then. Important part that it was so random was that it wasn't like Brock was going to be there the whole time. We were
No.
dropping him off at
Yeah.
the airport, and then we had to fly back together.
Yeah.
We didn't even really know each other.
That trip was so funny. Like, I just want to talk more about that trip because Daniel like kept offering me like the front seat, and I was like, no, like I can totally take the back seat. So I let Daniel have the front seat the whole time, but I remember Brock was driving, and we had the cooler of snacks in the back next to me, and Brock would ask me, like, hey Joe, like, can you make me a sandwich real quick since I'm driving? I'm like, sure. And then what was it? Something about she never offered to make me a sandwich or something.
No, because you made him a sandwich, and then you just handed it up to him, and then Brock just looked at me. He was just like, well, I guess you're not getting one either.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine. I didn't expect you to make me one.
But then we brought 2 tents. We brought one for Daniel, and we brought one for me and Brock to share. We got to the camping site, put up our tent, and then Daniel's like, oh heck no. He's like, I ain't sleeping in a tent by myself. So he literally just slept in Brock's little 1995 Blazer in the back of it and like locked all the doors.
Well, it just seemed like a lot of work to set up a tent for one night. I'm like, why would I do that when I could just
And
sleep
I
in
was
the back?
like, this is hilarious. Like, this guy's already so funny that he's just like, doesn't want to sleep in a tent by himself. He'd rather just sleep in the car with the doors locked. I was like, well, why didn't I just sleep in the other tent by myself? So me and Brock just like squished in the same tent. So then I was like noticing that Daniel was like very different. A lot of other guys I met and a lot of Brock's like other people he's brought around. Just the fact that Daniel was just he respected me so much. Like, I'm only 16 years old and he treated me like so kind. I had only met him like just a couple weeks ago. It wasn't like we had this whole long history. This guy is like really nice and we were just great friends throughout the trip. And then Brock left and I was like, oh, it's just me and him. I was just trying for it not to be awkward. It really wasn't super awkward. We were like going through security together to get on our flight. One of the security guards was like, sir, like, how old are you? And he's like, I'm 18. And I was like, no, you're not. I was like, you're 19. I feel like that's just totally a relationship now.
When you started talking about your side of the story, you like gave the actual date, and I'm like, I have no idea what it was.
I've already been helping you out since day one. I
Yeah.
just haven't been making these sandwiches.
I make
Anyway,
you sandwiches.
It was a great trip home. We had so much fun, like, on the flight. We just, like, played games and we just killed time in the airport. And then when we left each other, I was like, super sad. And I think that's when I realized that, like, hey, I actually really like this guy.
I definitely don't remember the sequence like you do, but I just remember you being really quiet. I don't remember you thinking that we were like friends. I remember you just being like weirded out that I was there the whole time.
No. I think that I was so quiet because you were so quiet.
No, you were definitely really quiet.
But you and Brock just, like, laughed at everything and had a great time. And then I feel like that's just, like, we just had a great time, all 3 of us.
Yeah, no, it's good. I just don't remember you thinking that I was like your friend.
That's awkward.
I remember
felt
just
like
being
your
in the
friend.
airport and like offering to buy you food, but then you're just like, no.
No, I like had such a strict budget. I remember this. I had such a strict budget for this trip that I told Brock, I was like, I'm only willing to spend this much and this much and this much, like this much for food, this much for campsites, and this much for my flight. And so I like had it all budgeted out. And then one of the nights we couldn't find a camping spot because we had just like winged it for that night. So the boys are like, let's just get a hotel. I'm like, I'm totally fine getting a hotel, but I already laid my whole budget out and it is spent. So I was like, you guys have to buy the hotel
Which was
if you want
fine.
to stay in a hotel. And it worked out great. And then Daniel offered to take me and Brock to Disneyland, and Brock said no.
Yeah, we were like driving past Disneyland. I'm like, all right, let's go, guys. Like, I'll pay. And then he's just like, just keeps driving. He's like, nope. I'm like, what?
And I
Okay.
just see Disneyland go by, and I'm just like,
I think he thought I was kidding or something, but I was dead serious.
oh, but then the food in the airport, I was like, oh, I already had my leftovers from lunch or that I would just eat those. And then he like offered to buy my dinner, and I was like, oh no. But I had already like used up my budget. So I was like, there ain't no way I'm buying my dinner. And then you offered, but I passed it up.
Up until meeting Joe's family, I didn't really have like a lot of Christian friends. So it was the first time that I saw them giving their leftover food. Went out to eat one night and they gave their leftover food to like homeless people. And then I was like, well, I really want to eat this later, but they just gave their food, so I just gave mine. And we got back in the car, and then Brock's like, sorry if we like made you give away your food. I was like, it's fine. But I just remember being like, it's different. I really wanted to like just stay around like, Joe and her family. Just kind of the effect that they have on other people was really cool. And yeah, but I definitely agree that like after we left, like both of our parents came to the airport and like picked us up.
That was the first time I ever met his parents.
Yeah, and then when we left, I was like, whoa, something's different. Like I never wanted to like say anything after that point, just because it was like my friend's younger sister. So I was like, well, if he says something, then I'll like, I'm not gonna lie to him and say that I don't like her, but I'm not just gonna like be weird about it.
We'll definitely share our dating story
Yeah.
in another video. Definitely a lot of great memories from that trip. Zero bad memories. They all were just so fun, like not being able to find a campsite and all that stuff. It just like made for great memories.
We got turned down by like 7 or 8.
Yeah, because we looked
hotels.
like freaking hobos.
Well,
We
they
had
were
just been like
young.
driving for 10 hours, and then it was like 2 19-year-olds and a 16-year-old. We're like going to all these hotels asking if they had a spare room. They just like look us up and down, and they're like, I don't think so. I'm like, oh, really?
And then when we finally got a hotel room, Brock's like, all right, we're gonna share a bed, and then Joe will get her own. I'm like, oh heck no, get in your own bed, boy.
So me and Brock had to share a bed. I don't think I got under the covers. I was like, oh, heck no. Thank you, Brock, for inviting Daniel on that trip, even though I did not like it when you said that you were inviting him. Honestly, if you wouldn't have done that, we might have not have been here. We probably would have, but... And thanks, Mom and Dad, for letting me go on that trip. Because I was only 16. I think they, like, made me carry pepper spray with me.
Just in case you need to pepper spray me.
Yeah, in case I needed to pepper it. A subscriber recommended that we do this video, so if you guys have any other video ideas, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Thanks for hanging out with us in this random car chat of how we met. Definitely not your average story. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Peace.
I like to be educated.